So what's to come?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be the be all and end all. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is personal experience, and that, I'm no strength and conditioning coach or physio, but I still think that having spent time in that environment, there's an understanding that we've gained from it and from the other people that we'll talk to, and moving forward. Initially, another reason for starting the podcast was really to give the athletes that we're trying to support a bit more of a platform. So as Rowgear, we made a decision to bring some athletes on board and try and support them in different ways through their career. So at the moment, we've got, you already seen Josh Bozeman-Jones, and then we've got Morgan Byron-Williams, who is a Cox at Leander and GB. She's a world champion, and Susie Deer, who again was trialing for GB, has spent some time in the GB team. She also rode at university at Oxford Brookes. To start with, it was really let's talk to those athletes. Like you said, we're interested in the background and get their experience and allow them to have a bit more of a platform to help themselves in rowing. Obviously, the way that the world's going and social media is a lot more online, and rowing doesn't necessarily, people aren't doing it to get rich. And if we can help other athletes find other ways to make a bit of money, whether that's with us or maybe being able to promote themselves in a way that other companies might be more interested in getting on board with them. So that's for me the start of what we're going to do. But then we can branch out in so many different ways, and there's so many different areas that I'd like to talk to different athletes about. I'm going to name any names yet of who we've got coming. But definitely some high-level rowers, and hopefully some coaches as well who've coached at different levels. Anyone who's anything to do with rowing, really. We're not going to limit ourselves just to athletes. I definitely want to have a focus as well on business. I think that's important, and life after rowing, and transferable skills. I think that's really important. I think that's another thing where I know so many people who've left rowing have struggled with that transition, and I did it for a time, but since then a lot of the things I've learned has helped me in be successful with this business. So that's another area that we're going to get into. Definitely going to be a mixture of people on here. We're going to have some names hopefully that will pull people in. Definitely going to start with my mates because I think it's a bit easier to talk to people who you know. As we get further down the line, we'll hope to speak to some other people as well. And I know a lot of what we do is based around Leander, and we both rode at Leander, but it's not. We're not going to limit ourselves to that. And again, the first members of our team that we've added are rowing at Leander, but that wasn't necessarily the reason why we took them on. We actually all coached together in some form at Keble College over the last few years. So we've sort of really been a bit of a team already in that environment. So it made sense for us really to start with those athletes when we were looking at people to support.
I really like what you said about how rowing is branched out. There's a lot of strength and conditioning, functional fitness, physio work, and we might not know a lot about everything, but we can certainly bring people on and leverage the deep understanding of what goes into being a successful athlete and voice that.
Yeah, I think it can take a few different angles, or it can take sometimes time to try and explain information in a way that other people understand. And some of the best coaches I've had would be people who are trying to get me to do a technical change, and maybe have had explained that in 3 or 4 different ways until I was like, oh, I get that now. Like, I understand what you're talking about. And that's something I've tried to do in coaching, is take that on, because that's something I found really useful. And I've been told that by other people that at times have managed to sort of get some of that more difficult talk into layman's terms. I think potentially it's because I'm not that bright and I need to break it down myself first. But then the way I've been able to give that information forward seems to have rung a bell. So from coaching, from talking to other athletes, it seems that the way I talk about things has been helpful. But again, that's just one angle. So the point of getting other people on would be to look at how they navigated that those things in their career. And ultimately, there is no real, you can write a book about it and speak to 100 people and say that this is how it is, but that's not it. There's 100 different ways to do anything. So, and I think that's where we can really hopefully help by, bringing personal experience, which isn't always transferable, but I think by speaking to lots of different people, hopefully we can have a lot of information that can hit different people, and hopefully, some people will resonate more with some guests than others. But in general, it's like I said, I think it's a unique position we sit in, and as much as hopefully, this will benefit us and what we do, really we have been looking for a long time at just finding those different ways to benefit other rowers as well.
I think a great thing about this podcast is that we're going to unify all of our strong points and bring you the best possible value to get the most information to improve your rowing in the shortest amount of time possible. But also, if you're interested in the backstory of certain athletes, or what goes into making an Olympic champion, or what it's actually like to sit at an Olympic start line, well, we're not going to name any names, but we've got some really, really exciting things coming up.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of these things, like we said, is transferable. But I think, again, like we are both fans of rowing. We've really enjoyed that as sport. We've really enjoyed how it's different to other sports. So personally, for us, we enjoyed pushing ourselves to that limit, and I think that's a common theme with rowers.
I think one thing that makes us a great team is that we are certainly both not afraid of hard work, and we're super competitive, which means that we're trying to constantly one-up each other, but not in a competitive way, but more of a cooperative way. And hopefully you guys will be able to get the biggest benefit of what we're bringing out to the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.